Hey, everybody, this is Robert Catanese with the Chatham County Public Information Office, and I want to thank you for checking out this special edition of The Chat. If you've been watching some of our episodes, there's no doubt that you possibly heard us talk about illicit drugs and the fentanyl crisis. But in today's episode, you're going to meet 7 people from all different walks of life that have come together for one common cause. And when you boil it really down, it comes down to ultimately saving lives. And our first panel is someone that you do know. He is the director for the Chatham Narcotics, counter-narcotics team, Director Michael Sarhatt.
Good morning, Rob. How you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Kurt Hediger is the Chief Public Affairs and Administrative Services Officer for the Chatham County School District. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Great to be here.
And Jill Cardenas is the Executive Director for the Mediation Center.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for being here. So we're going to jump right in.
Okay.
Now, we've talked before.
Yeah.
How does somebody, we're going to talk about a specific entity that you actually spearheaded that addresses the fentanyl crisis on a very unique level. You've got more than 20 years of narcotics law enforcement history. When we talk about this peer influencer group, how does somebody with 20 years of narcotics experience come up with this idea?
Well, after that amount of years, that Rob, we cannot enforce our way out of this problem. Okay, so in my prior life with DEA, I was in a different state, and that area was completely devastated by the opioid and fentanyl. Their numbers are probably about 4 or 5 times worse than we have here in Chatham County. So, having that experience, I knew that we needed to attack this problem in a lot of different ways. It's a very complex problem, and one of those ways, and it's the long game, is to get to our youth. And so, early on, I was introduced to Kurt, and Kurt and I, kind of hit it off. And the school district, was really excited about the premise of law enforcement coming in and talking to the kids. Mm-hmm. And so we did that at the high school level. And Kurt has been such a huge supporter of getting me into those high schools. And then, it's the genesis of, hey, what do you think? I got an idea. I mean, we sat in the car after an event. I said, hey, I want to pitch this idea at you. What do you think?
Right.
And, he's the pro when it comes to the education and that whole system. And so first words out of his mouth is, I got to introduce you to Jill and the Mediation Center.
Mm-hmm.
And so the other thing that I've really learned is that no one entity, no one organization is going to beat this.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to, law enforcement's got to come out of their shell and get in the game in all different areas. And so, building coalitions and this partnership between CNT, the schools, and the Mediation Center has this is what it's for.
What are you hoping that this initiative will accomplish?
Cool. So, initially I think we wanted to call this a pilot.
Mm-hmm.
It ain't a pilot anymore. It's a program. It's active. It's alive. It's going to start growing. So, what I had hoped is to be able to get with this program to every middle schooler in Chatham County, and at least have them become aware of the fentanyl and how dangerous it is, and that it's on everything. Mm-hmm. And so, one little decision by a young kid could terminate their life. And then when you put in the mediation center in the schools, they bring the expertise on how to pass that message along and to give the kids the tools to then make those sound decisions. And that's what the program does. It doesn't only, say, hey, don't do this. It gives the kids tools to be able to make those decisions properly. And that's what the mediation center and the school system have brought together with, they don't have the knowledge that I have, and it's coming up on 35, 36 years now in drug law enforcement. So I'm able to bring that to the table, and then they have all the expertise that needed to put that together. So we're killing a lot of, this program is more than go in and talk to the kids in the middle school, okay? So, straight out of the blocks, we're going to train, 16 to 20 high school students.
You're jumping ahead.
Okay.
You're doing good. No, you're doing good. I want to get this in because, we all know that the leading cause of death from 18 to 45-year-olds is fentanyl. So it sounds like this collaboration is starting the education process early, and it's vital to do that. Why do you think it's important for students to be talking to students about this devastating topic?
Well, I think after sitting down and talking and collaborating with the schools and the mediation center, it's all about the message and the messenger, okay? And whether I come into the school as this figure that the second I walk in, they shut me down, we've got our high schoolers that they're gonna listen to, they look up to, and so that they're gonna receive that message far better than an adult giving them that message, and that's the key.
That's awesome. This group goes way beyond just drug awareness, drug education. It also addresses some topics like, bullying, cyberbullying, or peer pressure, for that matter. Is that a component that you feel is vital to this initiative?
Well, one of the things that I always felt with this program is today's epidemic is not tomorrow's epidemic. Okay? Professionally, I've been through the crack epidemic, the meth and ice problem, and the
heroin
and heroin, and then on to the pills, and that. So over, I can go back and show you the epidemics across the last 40 years. Okay, and so this program will be in place, and we can shift gears to the next epidemic.
And unfortunately, there's going to be a next. Kurt, let me bring you into the conversation when we talk about this. And Director Sarhatt kind of touched on it a little bit, but if you can, delve into how this collaboration with the counter narcotics team in the school district got started.
Yeah, so we're very honored that we have some great partners here in Chatham County. I can't speak enough about the great work that Chatham Narcotics is doing and the great work that the Mediation Center is doing. The Mediation Center has been a partner of ours for many, many years. We already have established programs in our schools and working with high schoolers. That was a natural connect and a natural step forward. Director Sarhatt has been very forward with the fentanyl challenges, and one of the things I really appreciate about him is his willingness to get into the community and talk openly about the problem. And I want to stress very strongly that what we're talking about here, and you kind of touched on it, is the substance abuse, the opioids, the fentanyl is one part of this. Right. But there's a bigger part of it. There's mental health challenges that are involved. There's the peer pressures that students are facing today. And there's a whole cadre of it that also comes with social media impacts. There are a lot of things that kids can do today in our youth that parents need to really know about, and they should be monitoring their social media activity. For example, on Snapchat, students were and are able to use that as a communication tool to get access to some of these things or to be exposed from it. That is a very tough challenge for us in today's climate. When you think about it's no longer about the face-to-face interaction where you can really step in. There's a lot happening on social media, and that influence and that impact on the social medias can really wear down a young individual to make a bad choice that could have some very destructive results later on in their life or immediately in their life. So when Director Sarhatt came out and really started talking about the fentanyl, of course, we were poised and ready to say anything that you would like to get into our schools, to talk to our parents, to reach the community at large, we're there for you. We want to be a part of that. And again, as I was saying earlier, this really is not an issue for public schools. It's not an issue for parochial schools. It's not an issue for private schools. It's an issue for the community at large because everyone is impacted by the topics that we're talking about. Now, some of it, as we've experienced as a school district, and we've seen nationwide. I was just reading an article this morning about a school district in the Northeast who just adopted a partnership through a contract to provide additional mental health professionals available to their students. So the mental health realm plays a big role in this as well. But what better resource for our students to empower themselves to make quality decisions that are healthy decisions and not destructive ones than their own peers. And we all know very strongly, and Director Sarhatt has touched on it, that critical component of those middle grade years, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, where students are very much exposed to a whole new world of social behaviors, of things in the community where they're getting additional freedoms. They're getting ready to move into that high school, exciting moment of high school. And that comes with some challenges and pressures that they may not have faced before. It's important for us to ensure that we're having happy, healthy, and resilient students so they can make decisions that we like to pose as being healthfully selfish. Don't want to be a selfish individual, but when it comes to your health and making decisions that put you in a position to be very successful in the future, it's okay to be healthfully selfish. What that means is it's okay to say no. So a lot of times, Director Sarhatt has given us a lot of statistics. He'll say that a lot of individuals who are in their adult years who have drugs and substance abuse issues, a lot of them got started with experimenting with marijuana or opioids in those middle grade years. And we're not saying that every person that experiments that way is going to become a drug addict. But what we do know is those who do take that step, there's a large propensity and a chance that they will. We want to do all we can to raise it up, to be courageous to talk about it, because the worst thing that you can do in this scenario is to be silent. But the bigger part as adults, it's important for us to model behaviors so that they are courageous, so that they have the strength, and that they're empowered, so that they can make choices that are healthy for them and don't send them down the road of a destructive choice. Because in situations where we've seen all too far with the drug overdoses in our nation and the drug overdoses that are in Chatham County, we cannot take the risk to allow our students to go down that path. And I'm so encouraged by the work that we're doing with this partnership. And it was kind of unique in the fact that the perfect storm occurred, if you will. COVID had a big impact on this. So when we came out of COVID, as a school district, we did notice that some of our students, as they were getting used to getting back into the rhythm of the schoolhouse, they were exhibiting some behaviors that we hadn't really seen before. So we were dealing more with some behaviors in the school system that had disciplinary components tied to it, obviously. But we were recognizing that students who may have had the propensity to be influenced by someone in the community it's not unnatural for them to bring it into the social setting of the schoolhouse. And what we realized is that other students who may be dealing with some challenges and getting reacclimated into the fast-paced life of the high school world, where you now have some additional freedoms, they may be more susceptible to making a very bad choice that could lead to a very destructive outcome. So the Peer Mediation Center, who we already had a partnership with for many years, they had been working with us, and we have a very established partnership through the peer mediators, where we have students in our high schools who are trained through their programs to handle conflict resolution. We said, you know what, that framework that is already existing, if we were to expand that out and to bring in our partner from Chatham Narcotics, who can really give us the strong facts and the details and the dangers about this road when it comes to opioids and substance abuse, and the real hard facts that it's in our community. And parents, pay attention, because if your child is talking to the wrong group, there is a chance that they could be exposed to this and they could make a life-threatening decision. Well, the Peer Mediation Center that always has that foundation that's already in place in how to work with our students and how to train our students, where they can talk to other students and empower them with the skills for conflict resolution, was a natural connect for us to say, we need to come up with a program where our own students are going into middle schools and talking to middle-aged students, that eventually the middle school students, when they come up in the high school realm, they're going to see them anyway. So we strategically partnered our schools with the feeder patterns where the students from middle grades are coming up into high school. So they'll already know some of these students that are in the schools and see them as a trusted, valued friend. And the Peer Mediation Center had that framework developed in order to say, listen, we can train the students on a wider scope. Let's see what happens if we put the call to action out there and how they would respond. They responded overwhelmingly.
I believe it. You've taken a few of the questions that I had, but I still have a few more for you. How many schools is this program in right now, Kurt?
Yep. So there's a couple of components that we went through when we said we're going to bring these partners together and we're going to empower students to talk to other students. Well, there are a number of things you have to consider first. First, you have to consider, what's the student reaction going to be from that? We didn't really know. Then you have to consider, well, what's the lift on that, and how much interaction will the students be having with the middle grade students, and what does that do to their educational schedules? So you have to look at that. The third thing is you have to talk to the building administrators, the school principals, because if you don't have that buy-in, then the program really isn't going to run at optimal course, which is what we wanted. So in looking at all of those things, we said we should go into this and really do a pilot. So we have 11 high schools in Chatham County. We serve 36,000 students, preschool through 12th grade. Our high school model with the 11 schools has a natural connection from some feeder schools that are coming up through the middle grades. So we didn't feel that we really had the framework strong enough where we could launch it with all 11 high schools, but we said, well, let's pick 4 of them and key them up with their feeder schools.
Right.
So we started with Beach High School, New Hampstead High School, Islands High School, and also Jenkins High School. And they were picked strategically in part because some of them already had existing peer mediation programs that were very strong. Jenkins has a really strong model there for our peer mediators. We recognize that the Islands Coastal Middle School connection is very close. On the islands, you have a elementary school, a middle school, and a high school within walking distance. So it feels like a K-12 type campus.
Right.
New Hampstead High School is one of our largest high schools in Chatham County. Every year it has the largest graduating class. So we have to build extra time when those scholars walk across the stage. But we recently built a K-8 school, which again is in walking distance to the high school. So there was a natural connection there. And of course, Jenkins High School was a natural connect, as I said, with a strong program. Beach High School is another example where Durin Middle School, they're just like neighbors.
Right.
So we said, this makes really good sense for us. Let's go talk to the administrators. I think it took about 30 seconds for us to open up what the concept was, and they stood up and said, we're in.
So you had a lot of buy-in
We had
initially,
buy-in right out
which
of
is
the
important, which is
Yes.
important. So that leads me to the question of what kind of feedback, or is it too early, that you've gotten from folks?
Well, and I think Jill will certainly be able to speak a little more to this, but what we're hearing in the school system is other schools are hearing about this, and they're saying, we want the program. We want to get engaged. We want to learn how we can expand this into our hallways. Because really what's happening here is not only are you able to raise up a very challenging and difficult topic, but you're doing it in a way that makes sense, is age appropriate, and speaks the language where our students are able to talk to other students in their language, because they're the ones that are experiencing it. We laughed early on with Director Sarhatt when he would come in and he would talk to our high schoolers. Now, I will say, anytime that he came in and talked to our students, they were dialed in. And that was a data point for me as well. When I said, okay, the students recognize the importance of this topic. And by and large, our students across all of our schools want to do the right thing. We see that over and over.
Right.
But it doesn't take much for a small population that is engaged in the community and making some bad choices, that if that flows into the schoolhouse, it can be very disruptive.
Right.
And for some, it can have very destructive and life-threatening outcomes. So it's important for us as school leaders to look to our communities to find those supports and ensure that we're doing the right thing to raise up the topic, to be courageous, to talk about it, but to talk about it in the right way.
Right.
So as we saw this buy-in, which came through, and the other topic was the administrators, when their quick buy-in, as they understand the value of this program in continuing to do this, really has a strong impact on the climate of the schoolhouse, the positive learning spaces in the schoolhouse, and the overall culture of the schoolhouse. Because when children feel that they're in a safe place where they can go to another peer or an adult that is trusted, and they can talk openly and ask for help, we are doing the right thing, and we are going to have big dividends paid off in this program.
That's awesome to hear, because I think each school probably does have their own cultural differences that you need to adapt to.
Most definitely.
Jill, I want to bring you into the conversation and talk a little bit about what the mediation, for those who don't know, what the Mediation Center is and how you came to cross paths with these two gentlemen.
Okay, wonderful. Well, so the Mediation Center, we do everything from conflict prevention, which is hot and heavy here in this topic, and then also provide spaces for conflict resolution. So we do a lot of conflict that results from litigation, such as cases that we may receive from the court system, but also the community and workplaces. And so people can make referrals to the Mediation Center, and we help resolve the conflict because we provide facilitators and mediators, adults, to handle that conflict. We have about 100 volunteers that help us mediate adult conflict, and we have over 400, thanks to this program, we have over 400 students in Savannah-Chatham County Public School System as volunteers.
That's fantastic.
So they are peer mediators, they're positive peer influencers, and then we also have another program called Restorative Youth Court, and 5 schools are engaged in Restorative Youth Court. And so there's numerous students that have been trained on conflict resolution skills, restorative justice, and making positive decisions. And those students are all volunteers. It's over 30 schools within the school system. And, some of these kids, they take training over 12 hours to participate. And then they're providing conflict resolution both formally, as in mediation, but then also informally, just because students learn that, hey, they're a mediator, and they'll come up and talk to them.
So it sounds like you've had the template really in place and you're just expanding it.
Well, fortunately, over 15 years of experience with this relationship. And, there's so many people involved. It's not just the Mediation Center and it's school administration from up high, but each of these schools that are involved has an amazing school coordinator that has said yes. So we have the principal saying yes, but the heartbeat of that and the person on site that makes it happen is the school coordinator, and they're our liaison.
Right.
And so that school coordinator is communicating with the students. They're making sure that all their teachers know that they're going to be pulled out of class to do this other important work. And so it's our school coordinators that really help make it happen logistically to make sure that the kids are there, they know what's happening, yes, they're committed, and then doing the work when there's conflict.
You should all be commended for the legwork that you did to get this buy-in, because I think that's the most crucial part of this, is to have buy-in from the individual schools, which will then trickle down to the students. You know, Joe, when we talk about this specific group, what would you say is the ultimate goal here from the mediation perspective, and what you hope comes out of this?
Well, from the mediation perspective, we're always trying to figure out is how we can better empower and lift up the skills of an individual to be able to navigate conflict. And so we know that when students are faced with choices that cause discomfort, they're not really sure about, or they're not educated about, then we need to provide a forum for that education to occur. And we've learned through peer mediation that students want to talk to their peers. So it is a much higher success rate when students mediate with other students because they can relate.
Right.
A lot of our positive peer influencers are peer mediators. Every child has struggled, right? I'm sure we all have as we grew up. We've all faced certain experiences. And so the kids being able to talk to the kids, it creates that environment. And we've had those success stories already with positive peer influencers.
I guess it could be an easy question, it could be a difficult question, but what do you hope comes of the genesis of this pilot program that's now really blossomed into something bigger?
Faced with a decision, healthy selfishness. That's the goal. Bottom line is that at-risk youth, every youth is at risk. It's just, and then there's the risky decisions that come with just being a kid these days. Totally different, because it can stop your heart. It's a different time, and that means that we need to come to this critical point in our children's lives and do something differently. And we have over 60 kids that have said yes to that call to action, and that's significant. They are comfortable being a positive influencer, and we know how many celebrities are influencers these days, and I feel like that was a really good call.
Not all positive.
Correct.
Not all positive.
Right.
And so, but what we have is youth making all the decisions. They've designed the logo for the t-shirts. They will be invited to retreats this summer to talk about how they feel like we can improve the program, how they can improve the program. So it's youth led, it's youth empowered, and it's youth rich, and that means that more kids are going to be making better decisions.
You know, to kind of put a bow on this panel, and thank you again for all taking the time out of your day to really talk about this, because I think it's an important topic that folks need to hear. And I know I say that often on this podcast, but I can't say it enough. If you had a parting thought, and I'll go down the line, starting with you, Director Sarhatt, if you had a parting thought of what you want folks to hear about this program, maybe parents or guardians that will watch this, what do you hope they come out of it?
You know, I gave that a little bit of thought because I figured, you're going to hit me with that. I can tell you this, that numerous times I have been approached by parents that either I went into the high school and talked to their high schoolers, or our pure positive influencers have been into the middle schoolers. Okay. Last night, the Mediation Center held their year-end celebration of the youth and what they've accomplished and everything. And I attended. I was fortunate enough to be able to be there, and it was asked. And very proud to be there and watch not only the positive peer influencers, but a part of that, I had a parent come up to me, and they said, "Hey, okay, now I get it. She says, my middle schooler came home about 2 weeks ago and had this card with the scratch-offs. And says, Mom, we need to do this. And she goes, well, how do you do this? Well, Mom, you gotta pick which one, you gotta scratch it off, and you either live or you die. And the parent looked at me and said, Director Sarhatt, I had no idea. So I'm gonna throw this one at you. We have our high schoolers going in to teach our middle schoolers, and our middle schoolers are going home and teaching the parents. How about that? So if that's not a win, I don't know what is.
It is. Kurt.
Well, first of all, I have to commend the students. And as you heard about them taking ownership of it, we're finding that when they're going into the schools, that those unique communities, that personality is coming out. So it's our hope that as a public school system that we're able to see this in all of our high schools, feeding down to our middle schools, and that it continues to grow where our students are really the drivers here. We're just the content producers, if you will, and we're the shepherds moving it along. But the magic happens with the students engaging with the students. Can't thank our school counselors enough for the great work that they're doing as well, and they're deeply engaged in this process, and our school administrators for supporting it as well. And seeing it as just a regular part of our fabric, where my hope is that ultimately this program helps us break down the stigma of mental health, the stigma of substance abuse and addiction, and the stigmas around how do you really manage yourself in social media. And it's okay not to be a part of that group because they could create some destructive outcomes for you. So let's not be afraid to talk openly about this. Let's recognize that it is a problem, and let's empower our students who are now hearing that they are empowering their own parents and families to talk about this subject and ask for help when they need it.
Jill, put a bow on this topic.
My bow is that we invite others to participate. And so, yes, we have 3 strong partners here, and it's an invitation to others because there's lots of other work to do. It takes a lot of manpower to make this work, and we do have a goal. Every high school, every middle school will be allowed to have this program. And so we need lots of volunteers to assist with that because we like to be there as support for our youth. We have lots of different ways that you can engage, and I would just invite you to reach out to me, and we'll figure out a way to make you part of the solution.
You know, that's a good point, and I'm glad you brought that up, because if there are folks who are going to see this and want to take part in the program, is it something that they contact the mediation center? Do they go to their counselors? Kurt, Jill, how does that work?
It's a variety of ways. If it's a student at a school, we want them talking to their school counselor, their school social worker, because they're going to say, hey, I heard about this program, or I know something, and they're going to be able to handle it, real time with the students. And then the school would reach out to us to say, hey, let's get the school involved. If it's a parent, happy for them to reach out to us or their school, whatever they're comfortable with. And if it's just a community member that wants to be involved, yes, invite them to reach out to me, Jill, at the Mediation Center.
Yeah, these are really the partners that make it happen. We're the content, obviously, because we have the students, and we're providing really the environment to be successful so that folks can get in and they can engage in that way. But to the point of what Jill said, volunteers and folks that want to get engaged with the school system in any way, or want to find ways that they can support this program, they can always look to us at our website at sccpss.com, or they can send an email to our communications department, which is communications@sccpss.com. We welcome to hear from the community, and we're always looking for ways to improve this, because we're all in this for the same thing together.
That's right.
And that is to see a happy, healthy, resilient community, but of course, happy, healthy, resilient students across all parts of our educational footprint.
You guys are doing yeoman's work, and you should be all commended for the great work and implementation of a really a phenomenal project that has taken root in the community, and it's definitely well needed. I want to thank you, Director Sarhatt, Kurt, Jill. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to have people hear this message. That's going to wrap this special edition of The Chat, and we'll see you next time.